The human ship New Sol moved slowly through the dark space toward Vextara Prime. Inside the ship, Ambassador Lee Hana sat quietly in her small room, reading reports on her tablet. She looked like any other middle-aged woman. Her black hair was pulled back in a simple style. She wore a plain gray diplomatic suit. Nothing about her seemed special or dangerous. A soft knock came at her door. "Come in," she said in a gentle voice. Park Do-yun entered the room. He was young and eager, serving as her aide for the first time. His eyes showed both excitement and worry. "Ambassador Lee, we will reach Vextara Prime in 2 hours. The captain wants to know if you need anything before we land." Hana smiled warmly at the young man. "Thank you, Do-hyun. I am ready. Are you nervous about your first big diplomatic mission?" Do-hyun nodded honestly. "Yes, ma'am. The Vextrans have been fighting with our colonies for so long. What if they do not want peace? Then we will try to change their minds," Hana said calmly. "That is what diplomats do. We talk when others want to fight." Through the window, they could see Vextara Prime growing larger. The planet looked like a giant crystal ball floating in space. Tall crystal towers reached up from the surface, catching starlight and throwing it back in rainbow colors. It was beautiful but also cold-looking. "Tell me what you know about King Veltharion," Hana said as they watched the planet. Do-hyun checked his notes. "He has ruled the Vextaran Empire for 30 years. He is very proud and believes his people are better than all others in the galaxy. He thinks humans are weak because we are not as old as his civilization. What else? He has never lost a war. His armies have taken over many worlds. Some people say he enjoys watching his enemies suffer." Do-hyun looked worried. "Are you sure it is safe to meet with him?" Hana's expression did not change. "There is always risk in this job, Do-hyun. But sometimes taking risks is the only way to save lives. How many humans have died in the border fights with his empire? Almost 10,000 in the last 5 years. Then we must try to stop the killing, even if the king is dangerous." The ship shook slightly as they entered the planet's atmosphere. Soon they were flying over the crystal cities of Vextara Prime. The buildings were so tall they seemed to touch the clouds. Flying vehicles moved between the towers like schools of fish. Their ship landed at a huge spaceport made entirely of blue crystal. As they walked down the ramp, Hana noticed the Vextaran guards watching them. The aliens were tall, almost 8 feet high. Their skin looked like colored glass scales that changed from blue to green in the light. Their eyes were large and black, showing no emotion. Ambassador Lee Hana of Earth announced a Vextaran official. His voice sounded like wind chimes. "I am Commander Thex Molan. The king waits for you." They were led to a floating transport that carried them through the crystal city. Do-hyun stared in wonder at the alien buildings, but Hana watched the guards and security systems. She noticed everything: where the cameras were, how many guards they passed, which buildings looked important. The royal palace was the biggest structure in the city. It reached so high into the sky that clouds formed around its top. The walls were made of red crystal that seemed to glow with inner fire. Guards stood at every entrance, holding weapons that hummed with energy. Inside, the halls were wide enough for 10 people to walk side by side. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into shadows. Their footsteps echoed as they walked on floors made of polished crystal. More guards watched them from the walls. "The king sees very few aliens," Commander Thex Molan said as they walked. "You should feel honored. Do not speak unless he asks you a question. Do not look directly at him for more than a few seconds. Show respect." "Of course," Hana replied politely. They entered the throne room through massive doors that opened by themselves. The room was enormous. Hundreds of Vextaran nobles stood along the walls, all wearing robes of different colored crystal. At the far end of the room, on a throne made of black crystal, sat King Veltharion. The king was bigger than the other Vextarans. His scales were deep purple and seemed to move like liquid. A crown of silver metal floated above his head without touching it. His black eyes fixed on the 2 humans as they walked toward him. When they reached the throne, Hana and Do-hyun bowed as they had been taught. The king studied them for a long moment before speaking. "So these are the humans," King Veltharion said. His voice was deep and cold. "You look even weaker than I expected. Tell me, little human, why should the mighty Vextaran Empire make peace with such tiny creatures?" Hana kept her voice calm and respectful. "Your Majesty, humans and Vextarans have been fighting for years. Many have died on both sides. We believe that working together would benefit everyone." The king laughed, and the sound echoed through the huge room. Several nobles joined in the laughter. "Benefit everyone? You mean it would help you survive longer?" Your colonies are losing the war. You come here because you are afraid. We come here because we want to stop the killing, Hana said. Surely your majesty can see the value in peace. The only value I see is teaching other species to respect Vextaran power. The king leaned forward on his throne. Your people attack our ships, steal our trade routes, and think you can expand wherever you want. Why should I not crush you completely? Dohyun shifted nervously beside Hana, but she remained perfectly still. Perhaps we could start with small agreements, Your Majesty. Trade arrangements that help both our peoples. Cultural exchanges to build understanding. Understanding? The king's voice turned angry. I understand you perfectly. You are mammals. Weak, short-lived, emotional creatures who think you can compete with beings who ruled the stars before your species learned to make fire. The throne room fell silent. All the nobles watched to see what the human would do. Dohyun looked like he wanted to hide, but Hana just nodded politely. You have great wisdom, Your Majesty. That is why we hoped you might see a path to peace that smaller minds cannot see. King Veltharion stared at her for a long moment. Something in his expression changed, as if he was trying to solve a puzzle. You are either very brave or very stupid, Ambassador. I have not decided which. I hope I am brave enough to do my job, Your Majesty. We shall see. The king waved his hand. You will stay in the guest quarters tonight. Tomorrow we will talk about what your surrender terms will be. Your Majesty, we came to discuss peace, not surrender. The king's eyes glowed brighter. Ambassador, you seem to misunderstand your situation. You are in my palace on my world, surrounded by my armies. You will accept whatever terms I offer, or you will learn what happens to those who defy the Vextaran Empire. Hana bowed again. Of course, Your Majesty. We are grateful for your hospitality. As they were led away to their rooms, Dohyun whispered to Hana, He does not want peace. He wants us to give up completely. I know, Hana replied quietly, but we must try the diplomatic path first. That is why we are here. That night, as Dohyun slept in the guest quarters, Hana sat by her window looking out at the crystal city. Her reflection in the glass showed a calm, patient diplomat, but her eyes held something else, something cold and calculating. That did not match her gentle appearance. She opened a small communication device and sent a coded message back to Earth. The message was very short. Diplomatic approach proceeding. King shows no interest in reasonable terms. We'll continue negotiations as planned. But hidden in the code was another message. Target confirmed hostile. Preparing contingency protocols. Hana closed the device and went to bed. Tomorrow would bring more talks with the king. She would try once more to find a peaceful solution. But if King Veltharion chose violence over diplomacy, he would learn that humans were not as weak as they appeared. The next morning, Hana and Dohyun were brought to a smaller meeting room in the palace. The walls were made of clear crystal, and they could see the city spreading out below them. King Veltharion sat at a long table made of white stone. Several of his advisors stood behind him. Today we will discuss the terms of your surrender, the king announced as soon as they sat down. Hana placed a data pad on the table. Your Majesty, we have prepared some proposals for trade agreements that could benefit both our peoples. The king did not look at the data pad. I am not interested in trade. I want your colonies to stop expanding. I want your ships to stay away from Vextaran space. I want your people to admit that humans are inferior to Vextarans. That would not be a peace agreement, Your Majesty. That would be surrender without any benefit to humanity. Exactly. The king smiled, showing teeth like glass daggers. Your benefit is that I allow your species to continue existing. General Kexmorth, the king's military advisor, stepped forward. He was older than the other Vextarans, with scars across his crystal scales. Your Majesty, perhaps we should hear their proposals. Even inferior species sometimes have useful ideas. The king waved his hand dismissively. Very well. Speak, humans, but make it quick. For the next 2 hours, Hana patiently explained different ways their species could work together. She talked about sharing technology, trading resources, and protecting each other from threats in the galaxy. She spoke calmly and clearly, even when the king interrupted her with insults. Dohyun watched in amazement as his mentor continued trying to find common ground. No matter how rude the king became, Hana never lost her temper or gave up trying. Enough, King Veltharion finally said. You waste my time with this nonsense. Humans have nothing to offer that we cannot take by force. Your Majesty, Surely you can see that cooperation is better than war for everyone. The king stood up suddenly, his scales changing from purple to bright red. You dare to lecture me about what is better? I have conquered 15 star systems. My armies have never lost a battle. Who are you to tell me what I should do? I am someone who has seen what war costs, Hana replied quietly. Both winners and losers suffer when violence is the only answer. Suffering makes species stronger. It teaches them their place in the universe. The king walked around the table toward Hana. Your people have been protected by distance and luck. You have never faced a real enemy. That is why you are weak. General Kexmorth looked uncomfortable. Your Majesty, perhaps we should take a break and continue this discussion tomorrow. No. The king's voice was firm. I have decided. These talks are over. Hana remained seated, her hands folded calmly in her lap. If you have decided against peace, Your Majesty, then we will return to our ship and report to Earth. I do not think so. King Veltharion smiled again. You see, Ambassador, I have been thinking about what message I want to send to your people. They need to understand that the Vextaran Empire is not to be challenged. Dohyun felt his heart begin to beat faster. What do you mean? I mean that you will not be leaving my planet. The king pressed a button on his chair and the doors to the room opened. A dozen armed guards entered and surrounded the table. You are now prisoners of the Vextaran Empire. On what charges? Hana asked. Her voice was still perfectly calm. Espionage, threatening imperial security. I am sure we can find other crimes if needed. The king looked pleased with himself. Your executions will be broadcast across the galaxy. Every species will see what happens to those who oppose us. Dohyun jumped to his feet. You cannot do this. We are diplomats. We came here under a flag of peace. Sit down, boy, before I have you shot right now. The king's eyes glowed brighter. Your flag of peace means nothing here. To Dohyun's surprise, Hana gently touched his arm. It is all right, Dohyun. Sit down. But, Ambassador, they are going to kill us. Perhaps. Hana looked directly at King Veltharion. Your Majesty, I must ask you something important. Are you absolutely certain this is the path you want to take? Something in her voice made the guards shift nervously. Even General Kexmorth frowned as if he heard something strange in the human's tone. What did you say? The king asked. I asked if you are certain about this decision. Once you cross this line, there is no going back. Earth will not ignore the murder of their diplomats, the king laughed loudly. Earth is too far away to do anything about it. By the time they send ships, I will have conquered 10 more worlds. Distance is not always protection, Your Majesty. Are you threatening me? The king leaned closer to Hana. A helpless prisoner threatening the ruler of the greatest empire in this sector of the galaxy? Hana looked up at him with eyes that suddenly seemed much older and more dangerous. I am trying to give you one last chance to choose peace over war. There is no choice. You will die tomorrow in the royal arena. Thousands of my people will watch as human weakness is exposed for all to see. The king turned to his guards. Take them to the prison cells. Make sure they understand what awaits them. As the guards moved to arrest them, Hana spoke very quietly, so quietly that only those closest to her could hear. Protocol 7 has been authorized. Dohyun did not understand what she meant, but he saw something change in his mentor's face. The gentle expression disappeared, replaced by something cold and calculating. For just a moment, she looked like a completely different person. The guards put metal restraints on their wrists and led them out of the meeting room. As they walked through the crystal halls, King Veltharion called after them. Think about your deaths tonight, humans. In the morning, you will learn what happens to those who dare to challenge the Vextaran Empire. They were taken deep into the palace, downstairs carved from solid rock. The prison was very different from the beautiful crystal rooms above. Here the walls were dark stone and the air was cold and damp. They were put into separate cells across from each other. Ambassador, Dohyun whispered through the bars. What did you mean when you said Protocol 7? Hana sat on the hard bench in her cell. It is a communication code, Dohyun. I was letting Earth know about our situation. But how? They took our communication devices. There are other ways to send messages. Dohyun did not understand, but something in her voice made him feel less afraid. Do you think they will really kill us tomorrow? The king believes he will. What do you mean? Hana was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, harder. Dohyun, I have not been completely honest with you about who I am. What do you mean? Tomorrow you will see. But I need you to promise me something. No matter what happens, stay close to me. Do exactly what I tell you to do. Can you promise me that? Yes, but I do not understand. You will. Above them in the palace, King Veltharion was celebrating with his advisors. They drank crystal wine and talked about how the execution would demonstrate Vextaran power to the galaxy. The other species will see that even diplomatic immunity means nothing to us, the king said happily. They will think twice before challenging our expansion. General Kexmorth did not join the celebration. He stood by a window, looking down at the prison levels below. Something about the human ambassador bothered him. Her reaction to the death sentence was wrong. She had not shown fear or anger or desperation. She had shown something else, acceptance. Not the acceptance of someone who had given up, but the acceptance of someone who had been expecting this outcome, as if she had been prepared for it. The general had been a soldier for 50 years. He had fought many different species across the galaxy. He had learned to read enemies, to understand when they were beaten and when they were still dangerous. The human ambassador did not act like someone who was beaten. Late that night, as the palace grew quiet, the general went to check the prison security. Everything seemed normal. The guards were at their posts. The cells were locked. The prisoners were quiet, but something felt wrong. He looked at the security recordings from the arrest. He watched the ambassador's face when the king announced their execution. He played it back several times, studying her expression. There, just for a moment when she thought no one was watching, her face had changed. The gentle diplomat had disappeared, and someone else had looked out through her eyes. Someone dangerous. General Kexmorth had seen that look before, on the faces of his best assassins. It was the look of a predator pretending to be prey. He reached for his communication device to warn the king, then stopped. What would he say? That he had a bad feeling about a human prisoner? That a middle-aged diplomat made him nervous? The general shook his head and walked away. Tomorrow the humans would be dead, and his worries would be over. In her cell, Hana sat in meditation, preparing her mind and body for what was coming. She had given diplomacy every chance to work. She had tried to find a peaceful solution until the very last moment, but King Veltharion had made his choice. Now she would make hers. The Royal Arena was the largest building in the Crystal City. It could hold 50,000 Vextarans, and today every seat was full. The crowd buzzed with excitement as they waited to see the execution of the human diplomats. King Veltharion sat in his royal box high above the arena floor. He wore his finest robes and his floating crown. Beside him sat his nobles and military commanders. They all looked forward to watching human weakness displayed before the galaxy. This will be remembered for 1,000 years, the king said to General Kexmorth. The day the Vextaran Empire showed the galaxy that no species can challenge us. The general nodded, but he still felt uneasy. All night he had been unable to shake his worry about the human ambassador. She was too calm, too ready for death. It did not feel right. Down in the holding cells beneath the arena, guards came to get the prisoners. Hana and Dohyun were brought up through dark tunnels into the bright sunlight of the arena floor. The noise from the crowd was deafening. So many people, Dohyun whispered. He looked terrified. Stay close to me, Hana reminded him. Do exactly what I tell you. They were led to the center of the arena, where 2 posts had been set up. The plan was to chain them there and execute them with energy weapons while the crowd watched. It was meant to be a slow, shameful death. The arena floor was covered with white sand that sparkled in the sunlight. All around them, crystal walls rose up to the seats where thousands of Vextarans watched and cheered. Many held signs celebrating the coming execution. King Veltharion stood up in his royal box. His voice was amplified so everyone could hear. Citizens of the Vextaran Empire, today you will witness the fate of all who dare to challenge our power. The crowd roared its approval. These humans came to our world pretending to seek peace, but they are spies and enemies who wanted to weaken our great empire. The king pointed down at Hana and Dohyun. Let their deaths be a message to every species in the galaxy. More cheering from the crowd. Some Vextarans threw small objects down at the humans. Dohyun flinched, but Hana stood perfectly still. The executioner approached them. He was a massive Vextaran, even larger than the king. His crystal scales were black, and he carried an energy weapon designed to kill slowly and painfully. Chain them to the posts, the executioner commanded his assistants. As the guards moved to restrain her, Hana looked up at King Veltharion in his royal box. Their eyes met across the arena. She spoke just loud enough for the recording devices to pick up her words. "Last chance, Your Majesty." The king laughed and waved dismissively. "Kill them both." That was when everything changed. The guards reached for Hana's arms to chain her to the post. In one fluid motion, she broke the metal restraints around her wrists as if they were made of paper. The sound of snapping metal echoed across the suddenly quiet arena. Before anyone could react, she grabbed the nearest guard's weapon and fired it into his chest. He fell instantly. She spun and kicked the second guard so hard that his crystal scales cracked and he flew backward 10 feet. The executioner raised his energy weapon, but Hana was already moving. She dove under his shot and rolled between his legs. As she came up behind him, she grabbed his head and twisted it sharply to the right. The massive Vexteran collapsed like a falling tree. All of this happened in less than 5 seconds. The arena fell completely silent. 50,000 Vexterans stared in shock at the small human woman standing over 3 dead guards. She had moved so fast that many had not even seen what happened. Do-Yoon stood frozen, his mouth hanging open. This could not be the same gentle diplomat who had taught him about patience and understanding. More guards rushed onto the arena floor. Hana picked up the executioner's energy weapon and began firing with perfect accuracy. Each shot hit its target exactly where it would cause instant death. She moved constantly, never staying in one place long enough for return fire to hit her. Her movements were like a deadly dance. She would appear from behind one guard, eliminate him, and vanish before the others could target her. She used the arena equipment as cover and weapons, swinging from ropes and jumping off platforms with inhuman grace. "Stop her!" King Veltharion screamed from his box. "Kill the human!" But his guards were dying too fast. Some tried to surround her, but she moved through them like wind through grass. Others tried to use heavy weapons, but she was never where they aimed. A few attempted to retreat, but she hunted them down one by one. In the royal box, General Kexmorth watched in growing horror. "My lord, we need to evacuate you immediately." "No," the king shouted. "She is just one human. Send more guards." "Your Majesty, look at her." The general pointed down at the arena floor. "That is not a diplomat. That is a weapon." Hana had found a length of metal chain among the arena equipment. She used it like a whip, wrapping it around guards' necks and weapons. When she ran out of energy weapon charges, she switched to using bare hands and improvised weapons. A broken piece of crystal became a knife. A metal rod became a spear. She was not just killing the guards. She was terrorizing them. Those who survived her attacks found themselves facing something that moved like a shadow and struck like lightning. They began to break and run, but there was nowhere to go in the enclosed arena. The crowd of Vexterans started to panic. Some tried to leave, pushing and shoving toward the exits. Others sat frozen in their seats, unable to believe what they were seeing. A few recorded everything on their devices, knowing this would be shown across the galaxy. "What is she?" one noble whispered in the royal box. General Kexmorth had fought in dozens of wars. He had seen the best soldiers from many different species, but he had never seen anything like this human. She moved with a combination of speed, strength, and skill that seemed impossible. Down on the arena floor, Hana paused near where Do-Hyun still stood by the execution posts. She was breathing normally, not even winded despite having fought for 10 minutes straight. Bodies lay scattered around her. "Are you hurt?" she asked Do-Hyun, her voice gentle again. I... Do-Hyun could not form words. "It is all right. Stay here where it is safe." "Safe?" Do-Hyun looked around at the arena floor covered with dead guards and thought that nowhere near this woman could be called safe. More guards appeared at the arena entrances, but they hesitated to enter. Word was spreading quickly through the palace communication systems. The human diplomat had killed over 30 elite guards by herself. Some of the remaining guards decided they had other duties elsewhere. In the royal box, panic was setting in. Several nobles had already fled. Others demanded that the king order an immediate retreat to the palace bunkers. "She cannot reach us up here," King Veltharion said, but his voice shook. "She is trapped in the arena." As if she had heard him, Hana looked up at the royal box. She picked up one of the guards' energy weapons and fired at the crystal wall below the king's position. The wall cracked. She fired again. And again. "She is trying to bring down the royal box," General Kexmorth shouted. "We have to leave now." But it was too late. The crystal wall collapsed in a shower of glittering fragments. The royal box tilted dangerously as its support gave way. Several nobles fell screaming toward the arena floor. King Veltharion grabbed onto his throne as the floor beneath him shifted. He looked down and saw the human woman standing among the bodies of his guards. She was looking directly at him, and she was smiling. For the first time in 30 years of ruling, King Veltharion felt something he had never experienced before. Fear, real, bone-deep terror that made his crystal scales turn pale and his hands shake. This was not the gentle diplomat who had sat patiently through his insults yesterday. This was something else, something that had been hiding behind a mask of humanity. The crowd was screaming now, pushing toward the exits in panic. The arena floor was covered with the dead, and in the center of it all stood one small human woman, who had just destroyed the most powerful military force on the planet. Hana picked up a communication device from one of the fallen guards. She activated it so her voice would carry to every speaker in the arena. "My name is Lee Hana," she said calmly. "I am an ambassador from Earth. I came here seeking peace." Her voice echoed across the chaos of the arena. "But some of you call me by another name." She paused, looking around at the fleeing crowd and the panicking nobles. "Some of you know me as Baba Yaga." The name hit the crowd like a physical blow. Even in panic, many Vexterans stopped running. Across the galaxy, that name was whispered in fear. Stories told of a human shadow that moved between the stars, leaving only death and warnings behind. In the damaged royal box, King Veltharion felt his world collapse around him. He had not tried to execute a diplomat. He had tried to kill the most feared assassin in the galaxy, and now she was coming for him. The name Baba Yaga spread through the arena like wildfire. Vexterans who had been cheering for human blood minutes before now trampled each other trying to escape. The royal box continued to collapse as King Veltharion was pulled away by his remaining guards. "Get me to the command bunker," the king screamed as they dragged him through the palace corridors. "Seal all entrances. Call the military." General Kexmorth ran beside him, speaking rapidly into his communication device. "All units converge on the royal palace. We have a code red security breach. Repeat, code red." Behind them, they could hear explosions as Hana fought her way out of the arena. She moved through the palace like a force of nature, and every security system that tried to stop her only slowed her down for seconds. In the arena, Do-hyun stood alone among the bodies, trying to understand what had just happened. The woman who had taught him about diplomatic patience had just killed an army by herself. His gentle mentor was the most feared assassin in the galaxy. "Ambassador," he called out, but there was no answer. She had vanished into the palace, hunting the king. The crystal walls of the palace had been designed to keep enemies out, but they worked just as well to trap them inside. Hana moved through corridors filled with terrified Vexteran civilians and confused guards. Most of them ran when they saw her coming. Those who tried to fight learned why the name Baba Yaga was whispered in fear across a dozen star systems. She had spent 15 years building her cover as a diplomat. 15 years of smiling politely, while alien leaders insulted humanity. 15 years of finding peaceful solutions to problems that others wanted to solve with violence. But underneath that patient diplomat had always been something much more dangerous. The palace security systems tried to track her movement, but she moved in ways that confused their sensors. She would appear on one level, vanish, and reappear 3 floors away. She used maintenance shafts, ventilation systems, and hidden passages that even the palace guards did not know existed. Her target was clear: the royal command bunker deep in the heart of the palace. That was where King Veltharion would go when he felt threatened. It was the most secure location on the planet, surrounded by automated defenses and protected by elite guards. It might as well have been made of paper. Hana found the first security checkpoint blocking access to the bunker levels. 6 guards in powered armor stood behind energy barriers, confident that nothing could reach them. They were wrong. She approached them openly, walking down the corridor without trying to hide. When they ordered her to stop, she kept walking. When they fired warning shots, she ducked and rolled behind a crystal pillar. "Surrender now, human," one guard shouted. "You are surrounded." Her voice came from the shadows, calm and patient. "I am here for the king. Stand aside and you will not be harmed. The king is under our protection."
"No," Hana replied.
"He is not." The lights went out. Emergency lighting came on, casting red shadows through the corridor. The guards activated night vision equipment and searched for their target. But Hana had vanished again. She struck from above, dropping from a ventilation shaft directly onto the first guard. Her weight and momentum drove him to the ground. Before the others could react, she had taken his weapon and rolled behind their defensive position. Now the barrier that was meant to protect them trapped them with her. The fight lasted 30 seconds. When the lights came back on, 6 guards lay unconscious or dead. Their weapons were missing. The security checkpoint was destroyed. Hana moved deeper into the bunker levels. In the command center, King Veltharion watched security footage of her approach on multiple screens. Each camera showed the same thing. Empty corridors where his guards should have been, broken security systems, and no sign of the human assassin until she was already past their defenses. "How is she doing this?" the king demanded. "Where are my soldiers?" General Kexmorth studied the tactical displays. "She is not fighting them directly, my lord. She is avoiding large groups and eliminating small units one at a time. It is classic infiltration strategy." "Then send everyone. Flood the corridors with troops." "We have tried. She disappears whenever we send large forces. She only attacks when she has the advantage." The king stared at the screens showing empty hallways. "One human cannot defeat the entire palace guard." "Your Majesty," the general said quietly, "that is not one human. That is Baba Yaga." For the first time, King Veltharion truly understood what that name meant. He had heard the stories, but thought they were exaggerations. Tales of a human shadow that moved between worlds, eliminating targets that entire armies could not reach. Governments that fell overnight when they threatened humanity too loudly. Military leaders who simply vanished, leaving only recordings of a woman's voice promising worse things. If the attacks on human colonies continued, he had thought they were just stories meant to frighten children. But now he was living in one of those. "Stories, sir," a technician called out. "She has reached the outer bunker defenses." They watched on the screens as Hana approached the final barrier. Automated weapons tracked her movement. Energy shields hummed with power. The computer system announced that the area was sealed and defended by lethal force. Hana walked up to the main door and placed her hand on the lock panel. "What is she doing?" the king asked. The answer came quickly. The door opened. "That is impossible," General Kexmorth said. "Those locks require Vextran genetic codes." But Hana was already inside the outer bunker. She moved past the automated defenses as if they were not there. Weapons that should have fired automatically remained silent. Barriers that should have been impossible to cross simply opened for her. "She has our security codes," someone whispered. It was worse than that. She had access to systems that even the king did not know existed. For 15 years, while playing the role of a patient diplomat, she had been mapping Vextaran defenses. Every meeting, every cultural exchange, every trade negotiation had been an opportunity to gather intelligence. Earth's greatest assassin had been studying her targets for years. "Seal the command center," the king ordered. "Everything. Every door, every access point." "Done, sir," the technician replied. "The command center is now completely isolated. She cannot possibly reach us here." The lights went out. When the emergency power came on, Hana was standing in the center of the command center. She had entered through an access panel that no one knew existed, moving through spaces too small for a normal person to use. But Baba Yaga was not normal. The remaining guards raised their weapons, but she gestured for them to stop. "You have families," she said in her gentle diplomat voice. "Go home to them. This is between me and the king." Some of the guards looked at King Veltharion, waiting for orders. Others looked at the woman who had just walked through their most secure defenses as if they were not there. "Kill her," the king screamed. "Protect your king." But the guards had seen the security footage. They knew what happened to those who fought Baba Yaga. Slowly, one by one, they set down their weapons and left the command center. General Kexmorth was the last to go. He looked at his king with something like pity. "You brought this on yourself, my lord. She offered you peace." Then he too left, sealing the door behind him. King Veltharion was alone with the most dangerous human in the galaxy. "Please," he whispered. "I am sorry. I made a mistake." Hana pulled up a chair and sat down across from him. When she spoke, her voice was the same patient, diplomatic tone she had used during their negotiations. "Yes," she said. "You did." Outside the command center, General Kexmorth posted guards with orders to let no one enter or leave. He sent messages to all military units, stand down and await further orders. He contacted the other worlds of the Vextaran Empire, prepare for a change in leadership. Then he sat down to wait. Inside the sealed command center, King Veltharion was about to learn what it meant to be alone with Baba Yaga, and she was going to teach him exactly why humans were not as weak as he had believed. In the sealed command center, King Veltharion pressed himself against the wall as far from Hana as possible. His crystal scales had turned completely pale with fear. The mighty ruler who had conquered 15 star systems now trembled before a single human woman. "Please," he whispered, "I will give you anything. My fleet, my worlds, my treasure. Just spare my life." Hana sat calmly in her chair, watching him with patient eyes. "What do you think I want, Your Majesty? Revenge? Payment for trying to kill you?" The king's voice shook. "Name your price. I want to finish our diplomatic talks." The words were so unexpected that the king stopped trembling for a moment. "What? We came here to negotiate peace between our peoples. You interrupted those negotiations by trying to execute us." Hana folded her hands in her lap. "I would like to complete them now. But you are Baba Yaga. You kill people. Sometimes, when they give me no choice." Her voice remained gentle. "I prefer diplomacy. It is cleaner and fewer people die." King Veltharion stared at her in confusion. "I do not understand. Let me explain something to you, Your Majesty. Earth has many diplomats. We send different ones to different situations." Hana stood up and walked to the wall display showing the Vextaran Empire. "For friendly governments, we send regular ambassadors. For difficult negotiations, we send specialists." She touched the display, highlighting the border regions where humans and Vextarans had been fighting. "For dangerous situations where the other side might choose violence over talk, we send people like me. Diplomats who can protect themselves if negotiations fail." "You are an assassin disguised as a diplomat." "No." Hana turned back to face him. "I am a diplomat who is also an assassin. There is a difference." She returned to her chair and sat down again. "I genuinely wanted peace, Your Majesty. I spent 3 days trying to find solutions that would benefit both our peoples. I offered trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and cooperation against common threats. I was patient with your insults and respectful despite your rudeness." The king said nothing, but he was listening. "You chose to respond to diplomacy with execution, so I responded with the skills I use when diplomacy fails." Hana's voice became colder. "But I am still willing to talk peace if you are." "After what just happened? After I tried to kill you? Your Majesty, in my 15 years of diplomatic work, I have been shot at, poisoned, kidnapped, and sentenced to death by 7 different governments. It comes with the job." King Veltharion slowly moved away from the wall. 7 governments tried to kill you? Yes, 4 of them no longer exist. 2 learned to negotiate properly. 1 became humanity's strongest ally after their leader understood what they had almost unleashed. What happened to their leaders? Hana smiled, and it was not a kind expression. That depended on how quickly they learned to take diplomacy seriously. The king sat down in his throne, still keeping distance between them. "What do you want from me?" "The same thing I wanted 3 days ago. Peace between our peoples, Kanindi, but now you have demonstrated your power. You could just threaten me into agreeing." "I could. But threats create resentment, and resentment leads to future conflicts. I prefer voluntary agreements." Hana activated the wall display again, showing star charts of both human and Vextaran space. "Your Majesty, let me share some information that was not in our original briefings. Information that explains why Earth really wants peace with your empire." The display changed to show the far edge of human space, where red markers indicated unknown threats. 3 years ago, our deep space scouts encountered something at the edge of the galaxy. Ships unlike anything we have seen before. They destroyed 2 of our exploration vessels before vanishing. King Veltharion leaned forward despite his fear. "What kind of ships?" "We do not know. But they were more advanced than anything humans or Vextarans have built. Our analysis suggests they were scouts for something much larger." The display showed projected invasion routes from the galactic edge. "We believe something is coming, Your Majesty. Something that will threaten all of us. Humans and Vextarans waste resources fighting each other while a real enemy approaches." "Why did you not tell me this before?" "Because you would not have believed it. You thought humans were too weak to be worth listening to." Hana gestured to the destruction visible through the command center windows. "Now you know better." The king studied the star charts for a long moment. If this threat is real, why should I trust humans to fight beside us? Because you have seen what one human can do when cornered. Imagine what humanity can accomplish when we work together instead of against each other. For the first time since the arena, King Veltharion began to think like a ruler instead of a frightened animal. The implications of what she was showing him were enormous. What kind of alliance are you proposing? Full military cooperation, shared technology development, joint colonies on the frontier worlds, and most importantly, combined fleets to face whatever is coming from the dark. You want our military secrets. We want to survive, Your Majesty. Both of our species. Hana stood and walked to the communication panel. I am going to contact Earth now and tell them what happened here. I can report that negotiations failed, and the Vextaran Empire has chosen war. Or I can report that we found a path to peace. Her finger hovered over the communication controls. Which report would you prefer I send? King Veltharion looked at the destroyed arena visible through his windows. He thought about the power this one human had displayed. Then he thought about an entire species of beings capable of such things. If I agree to this alliance, what guarantee do I have that humans will not betray us? The same guarantee we have that you will not betray us. Mutual benefit and shared survival. That is not much of a guarantee. Hana smiled, and this time it was genuinely warm. Your Majesty, 3 hours ago you tried to execute me in front of 50,000 witnesses. Now we are discussing alliance terms. If I was planning to betray you, would I not have simply killed you and conquered your empire? The king realized she was right. If humans wanted to destroy the Vextaran Empire, they would not need elaborate deceptions. They would just send more people like her. What happened here today, he said slowly. My people saw me defeated. They will think I am weak. Your people saw you survive an encounter with Baba Yaga. That will make you the most respected leader in the galaxy. King Veltharion considered this. Already he could imagine how the story would be told. The king who faced the legendary human assassin and lived to make peace. There is one condition, he said finally. Yes? I want to know who you really are. Your real name, your real history. If we are to be allies, I want to know who I am allying with. Hana was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device. She pressed it against her neck and her appearance began to change. Her face became sharper, her eyes darker. When the transformation was complete, she looked like a completely different person. My real name is classified beyond top secret, she said in a voice that was also different. But you can call me what my targets call me. Death Walking Softly, and Lihana, is one of 17 diplomatic identities I have used over the years. Each one carefully built and maintained for situations like this. The king stared at her. How many others like you does Earth have? That information is classified. How many? Hana's smile was mysterious. Enough, King Veltharion understood. Humanity did not rule through massive fleets or overwhelming technology. They ruled through the promise that any threat to human interests would be met by people like her. Silent, patient, and absolutely lethal. I accept your alliance proposal, he said. Excellent. Hana activated the communication panel. Earth Control, this is Ambassador Lihana. Peace negotiations have concluded successfully. The Vextaran Empire has agreed to full alliance terms. Outside the command center, General Kexmorth heard the announcement and smiled. He had been right to trust the human. Peace was better than war, especially war against people who could do what she had done. 6 months later, the first joint human Vextaran patrol ships launched toward the galactic edge. The crews worked together smoothly, united by shared purpose and mutual respect. King Veltharion became one of humanity's strongest advocates in the Galactic Council. When other species questioned human strength, he would show them recordings of what happened in his arena. The discussions always ended quickly after that. Do-Yun was promoted to senior diplomatic aide and assigned to the human embassy on Vextara Prime. He never forgot the lesson he learned that day. Sometimes the best diplomats are the ones prepared for diplomacy to fail. And Lihana, she returned to Earth for debriefing, then received a new assignment. Another alien government was making threats against human colonies. Another diplomatic mission was needed. She packed her gentle diplomat disguise and prepared to try peace one more time. But now the galaxy knew what happened when someone tried to kill a human diplomat. Word spread quickly among alien governments. Treat human ambassadors with respect. Listen to their proposals. Consider their offers carefully. because you never know when you might be negotiating with Baba Yaga. And if you try to kill her, you will learn why humanity had become the most feared and respected species in the galaxy, not because they were the strongest or the most advanced,